friends. I think it's time for another bedtime story. This one is called Escape. The first time it happened, Cassie thought it was a dream, that she must have been asleep and dreaming. Since that day, now and then, she had felt a similar sensation when she concentrated on Sonny in the sliding of taut muscle or the shiver of skin under the tackle of a fly. On this sunny summer Saturday, Cassie was sitting in her favourite place in Sonny's paddock, her back against the steel gate and her legs stretched out in front of her, when it happened again. The morning sun was warm on her shoulders and the side of her face, and glinted in copper shards from Sonny's chestnut coat as he gazed barely meters away. He munched with a steady rhythm, and she had closed her eyes against the glare of sun, harsh and bright now as the morning stretched out. The next thing she knew, she was snatching the soft green strands between her own teeth, ripping with a slight sideways twitch and feeling in her mouth that miraculous dance of lips, teeth and tongue. She could taste the succulent grass, sugar sweet. A cry from the house startled Sonny, and as one the two heads swung and looked. Laura, Cassie's big sister, was standing on the front deck and waving. "Cassie, Granny's here." Cassie was sure she felt her own ears swivel and prick forward at Laura's call. Laura once had a friend who could wiggle his ears, and after he'd gone, Cassie sat in front of the mirror and tried to make her ears move, tried and tried, but nothing happened. Before she was interrupted just then, it had felt like she was doing it. If only she could be a horse. But for now, she was just Cassie again. She scrambled to her feet and hurried over to the house, the circulation returning painfully to her rear. She had moved here from the city 6 months ago, partly to be closer to Granny since Grandad had died, and partly because Mummy had excelled her high, motivated self to win an important job at the Borough Council. Since the move, Cassie's world has changed in every way. She didn't like her new school. She always seemed to say the wrong things. The other children didn't understand her thoughts and stared and smirked at her questions. Mummy was hardly home, trying hard in her new job to make a good impression and prove herself. Always at work, even on Saturdays like today. When she was home, she seemed distracted and unreachable, constantly finding fault and out of sorts. Cassie was never sure what she had done wrong or how to fix it. The only good thing about the move was darling Sonny, the elderly chestnut gelding who had come with the property. Her yearnings receded as she ran to greet Granny with a hug and a kiss. She loved Granny's visits. She seemed to have a great effect on the whole family. Mummy would be a lot calmer. She could even be quiet and kind. Laura played for longer with her, and Daddy tried hard too. He often answered her questions when Granny was here, the sort of questions he usually grunted at and or ignored. She was 6, and she had a lot of questions. "Granny, can people turn into animals?" "You mean like a shapeshifter?" People used to believe that once. They thought it was a punishment from the gods or a way to escape unpleasantness. Granny studied her thoughtfully. "Why do you ask, my darling?" "Well, I think I was turning into a horse just before." Granny smiled, and Cassie was suddenly cross with her. "Really, I was." and then I'd stand up and jump and kick. With enthusiasm, Cassie demonstrated on the bouncy turf. Sonny would be my best friend, and we'd be always together, and no one would be grumpy and shout and tell me I was naughty. You would make a lovely chestnut pony, said Granny, with your hair that colour. It's like Sonny's coat in summer. She gathered the little girl into a hug, but as she did it, it tightened her lip and frowned over Cassie's head. You aren't naughty, my sweet, you are a good girl. Mammy said I was naughty this morning, though, said Cassie, twisting out of the old lady's embrace and gazing up into the sweet familiar face. I just wanted to see Sonny before breakfast, and she said if I went, I couldn't have any, so I ran outside with my toast. Oh dear, sighed Granny. And then Mammy went to work and she didn't say goodbye. I suppose she was running late. Never mind. You can say I'm sorry tonight when she gets home, Cassie agreed. She would recite a little speech, after which Mammy would hug her, and they would both say, I love you. Maybe then everything will be all right again. Are you here all day, Granny? Yes, dear. Your dad won't be back from golf until late. If his day goes according to plan and he wins the club champs, he will have to stay and shout the bar. Maybe he won't win, said Cassie, and hoped he wouldn't. She immediately felt bad. Winning was important to Daddy, and she wanted him to be happy. If only he could win, come home straight away. I'm sure he'll win. He's been practicing every day since you moved here, hasn't he? Yes, he has, Cassie said, every day. He doesn't even have time to read me a story, and I'll never find out what happens to Harry and Ron. She was interrupted by the sound of wheels on a gravel drive. Bye, Granny, bye, Cassie. Laura was waving from the window of the plum-coloured Corolla, the extra car they found they needed now they lived in the country. There was no public transport out here. As soon as Laura turned 16, she got her restricted license. Now she was independent, able to drive herself anywhere she wanted to go. When she had her full license, she had promised she would take Cassie sometimes, but for now, Cassie had to stay behind. Where's Laura going, Granny? She has practice for the high school stage challenge, didn't she tell you? Then she'll probably hang out with her friends, which means it's just you and me. Hooray! Granny hoisted 2 fists in a victory salute, but Cassie turned away, bottom lip between her teeth, and watched the car until it turned the gate and disappeared on the road into town. Laura didn't return until the sun had lost its warmth and the fence posts were leaving long bars of shadow on the grass beside Sonny's paddock. Granny left then, with waves and kisses. Cassie had prepared a little speech for her mother, which she perfected as she snuggled up in bed that night. But the speech was wasted on her mother. Her mother didn't get home until late, when Cassie was already asleep and dreaming of galloping and backing across green hills as a chunky chestnut pony. It was another cheerful morning full of light and birdsong. Cassie woke to a restless urgency and crept outside while the house slept to watch the dawn with Sonny. The grass was drenched, so she stood and leaned her back on Sonny's comforting shoulder, moving when he moved, facing the mount of hill to the east, black against the lime-green morning sky. When the first rays of the sun stroked her forehead, she closed her eyes and wallowed lizard-like in its warmth. was much later when Laura opened her bedroom curtains and looked across the lawn to Sonny's paddock to see a second chestnut grazing beside him, smaller and lighter, with a deep russet mane and tail. She immediately thought of Cassie and how excited she'd be. She hustled along to her sister's bedroom door and pushed it open. Cassie, look, there's a pony in a paddock with Sonny, and its mane and tail are exactly the same colour as your hair. Wake up, sleepyhead. The room was still dark, and she peered at Cassie's bed, willing her eyes to adjust in the dimness. One corner of the top sheet trailed on the floor, but there was no mound of furry hair on the pillow where it should have been. Cassie? Laura turned and shouted through the open door, Mum! Dad! Where's Cassie? Beyond the steel gate, a strange pony raised her head and pricked her ears. She gave a little buck, raised one around the paddock, then blasted back to the stand beside Sonny, tossed her mane, and stared. The end. If you could turn into an animal, what would it be? Would you choose a pony? Or maybe you'd be a tiger, or a snake, or a little kitten? We can always find out. Just fall asleep.